Okay, so we had a question. Thank you. All right, we had a question from the audience. Is there a restriction that keeps a pilot from switching from IFR to BFR? Is there a restriction that keeps pilots from switching?
No, there's not a restriction that's usually dictated by the pilot and the conditions in which they are flying. So you would typically use instrument conditions when the weather is poor, not always, but that's typically what you would do. So it's not a requirement, it's the decision of the pilot.
Okay, great. Thank you, Keith. Next.
Can I expand on that? That's part of the reason we're the company that we're partnering with here is looking at various things to help pilots use the non-instrument approach. So that one of the things they're looking at is a published visual approach. So the weather is nice and they have more flexibility in a published visual approach to maneuver around away from communities. So it gives more options for pilots to use to keep them airplanes away from our community members. So those are the kinds of things that this partnership will be looking at.
Great, thank you, Keith. Okay, next question. 2 questions. Why can't pilots who fly into or out of Camarillo Airport between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. be disciplined or fined?
So for those not with us for the last couple of years, airspace is controlled by the federal government. So we as a county, local cities, can't just make up our own rules. That was banned back in 1990, the federal government, because communities were making up their own rules across the country. All of that was banned in 1990. So as I mentioned earlier, we have in our joint powers agreement with the city of Camarillo something that was grandfathered in because it was 1970s, which bans for us departures out of Camarillo from midnight to 5 a.m. So that was grandfathered in. But us just restricting or limiting what pilots do at either of our airports at this point is superseded by the federal government. So we can't just make up rules or discipline pilots. So we work with pilots and they're open to that because again, they're community members as well, understanding the big picture that they want to be good neighbors and it's been very successful.
Okay, next part of this person's question. Is the Camarillo Airport owned by the county? If not, by whom? Is the money generated worth the cost to the citizens?
Well, I won't end the last part of that, the piece of it. So there is a benefit that the airports have to, and they are owned and operated by Ventura County. There are the economic jobs, as I mentioned, emergency services. There are a lot of benefits to having airports during troubling emergency times. Again, the most recent fires we had, the helicopters that are based there provided great services to the community of Ventura County. Life support, life flights, organ transport, again, the jobs, economic viability. I'm not going to make the value trade-off question, but obviously it's not appropriate for me to say that.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, do you have a question, ma'am? Yeah. Let me bring a mic to you. Just 1 second. Thanks, Keith. Yeah. Okay.
Who is paying for all of this? Like it shows quite costly. And also, do you control just the airport, or do you control all the businesses, the schools, the animals, who controls all that?
That's a big question. So 1970s, when the Oxnard Airport, the Oxnard Naval,
Put the mic a little closer.
when the airfield was closed down by the military, it was negotiated and deeded to Ventura County. So Ventura County operates the airport. You're correct in that pieces of that not only went for the airport and to the county, but were given to the fire district, to the college district, parks district. I think there's even other locations that were divided up. So we operate the airport and a large portion of the business park. Animal Services happens to be there, so we rent space to them, even though they're part of the county, that's part of the requirement. But all of those revenues, both from the business park and from the airport, so that's businesses at the airport, pilots that rent hangars and tie-down space, all of those revenues between the two airports and the business park all generates about $10 million a year. So we're an enterprise fund, self-sufficient. All those that use the airport pay the salaries, pay for this meeting, and those kinds of things to run and operate the airport. We have reserves, again, in the neighborhood of about $13 million in addition as for projects and other things we do over time.
And so do the school districts that have the schools there, do they pay the county for that space?
The answer is no. As Keith mentioned, when the Department of Transportation deeded over the base, they actually split it up to 7 or 8 property owners. So you have distinct entities or agencies that own various property at the airport. The Department of Airports, or the county, is the largest owner. And then, as Keith mentioned, there's several school districts. Ventura Superintendent of Schools, Oxnard Union High School District. There's actually a church out there that was also deeded property. So there's multiple owners that make up the full, what many people call the airport campus.
I just had a quick question for, excuse me, a question about the FAA that you mentioned. I hadn't thought about the fact that I understood that they are in charge of the skies and the rules, but I can't imagine that Camarillo Airport is the only community airport that's having these kind of problems in California or across the country. And what I'm wondering is, why haven't the airport management folks gotten together and tried to convince the FAA that it has to change, that you should be able to go back with their guidance or their acceptance to restrict things such as not only arriving between, say, midnight and 5, but leaving between midnight and 5, other aspects of it. Why haven't the airports been more active about demanding our rights to be able to make decisions about airports in our communities? Thank you.
I would say that the answer is that has happened over the years. Comments and input. The challenge is that our community would say, and candidly, I've had neighbors say, nothing should be flying between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Right? So the challenge for the FAA is every community would make different rules, and some would just say, we don't want them at all. Just shut them all down. And we've had this over the years, and here's the conversation I have with folks that say, why do we need Camarillo and Oxnard? When I fly, I go to Burbank, I go to LAX, and I go to Santa Barbara. Logical question, of course. And here's the answer from the FAA's perspective, who looks at across the United States. You've seen on the news what the airports look like on Thanksgiving weekend and Christmas, those holidays. Imagine every single day looking like that. That's what those airports would look like if you didn't have the smaller airports. They would leave traffic. Those holidays are caused by the amount of people. But what the smaller airports do across the country is relieve the small Cessnas and the private jets away from those busier airports so that that flow can happen across the United States. That's how they look at it. So to answer your question is, we've had those discussions, which is why they have a Part 150 process, which we engaged on both of our airports. And here's the things we're doing. And if you look deep into that program, we're doing more than they allow. Because there's a section that says, here's what the FAA is going to look and approve. And oh, by the way, the last part of that is, in addition to that, which we're not even asking for their approval, we're going to go do. And so that's the step above, which is why we're engaged with this consulting firm that you heard from. I know it's very complex, and I apologize for that. But it is a complex thing to do, not only for our airport and the FAA, and we add complexity because we sit next to a naval airspace, which means working with the DOD and their approaches. Not to say we can't do it, but this is just what we're working on now. We've had community members talk about permanent noise monitors. We're looking at that. Jeanette and I just had a conversation last week. She's looking at new software to make it easier for folks to make comments, and it correlates with an airplane that comes into the... So those are the kinds of things, and there'll be 10 more new things in the next several years. Those are just...
There's no repercussions to that pilot. You can document it. You can tell afterward that was lobbying. Lobby doesn't get its hands slapped.
I can honestly say, and I've been doing this for a long time at multiple airports, it's in pilots' best interest. You're right. We can't find them right today, but it's in their best interest. You've seen across the country where airports have closed. If the pilots know if they don't work with us, there's repercussions. And then the ultimate one is to shut down the airports. And that has happened. And they know that. So
Thank you.
that's the ultimate hammer we have.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that the airport generates $10 million a year, is that correct?
Between the two airports, Oxnard Airport,
Oh, okay.
Camarillo Airport, and the business park.
Does that include the upkeep of the runway and all that, or do taxpayers?
So, okay, a deeper question. For capital projects, again, the day-to-day operations, our revenues are sufficient. And then large capital projects, we're part of the national system. Most people don't know, when you buy an airline ticket, a portion of that goes into the Aviation Trust Fund, which totals all airports in the country at $15 to $18 billion a year. So when we're redoing a runway or a taxiway, we get grant dollars to do that. So those funds, that's part of the whole FAA system. So LAX, Burbank, Camarillo, Oxnard are part of that system to get grant funding for the large, expensive capital projects.
So that's where the funds come from for the runway upkeep?
For those large,
Not
expensive.
any local taxes or state taxes?
No local city taxes, correct. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I think we're going to formally close up. And again, our project team and airport staff, they're going to be hanging out. So if you guys have any other questions that you'd like to ask, they'll be here for a few more minutes. And we thank you for your participation in coming out. And you have until August 18th to make your formal comments if anybody still wants to do that. With that, we'll close the meeting. Thank you so much.
Please take your cookie with you, otherwise we'll eat it.